Yeah, so, yeah. My name's Joe Cubero. I'm born and raised in Tampa, Florida, and some of you may follow me online, and you know me as the Professional X. I started that brand, which I didn't even expect to start a brand. I was coming off the back end of a really bad relationship that turned into a really toxic situationship to follow that. So I had always posted on my Snapchat for my 30 people that followed me at the time, and all my friends would be like, you need to be speaking, you need to be doing something online, you need to be helping people. It's just like, how do you even start that? You know, so I remember one year I had sold my house and I had a good amount of money in my account, and I had all these people around me and all my friends and family and the girl I was dating at the time. And the very next year, the money was gone, and so were the people. You know, not to say that my family isn't still around, but that girl was gone, and all my friends that I was hanging out and drinking and partying with that had all kind of evaporated. And I had started doing reels. I did one night. I was really nervous. I had never posted on my story on Instagram. I didn't have an Instagram during the relationship I was in because I didn't have an Instagram for like 3 years due to the relationship I was in. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna post a story and see what happens. And at the time I had 762 followers. And I posted it, went to sleep, didn't think anything of it. And the next day it did like 1,800 views within like 10 hours. And that gave me the motivation to be like, okay. So that turned into an outlet for me. I never planned for it to turn into what it has at this moment. So I did the Professional X thing for the last 3 years, and I had a lot of success with it. I have over 150 reels that have done over 1 million views. When I first started, I just wanted one reel to do 1 million views. And then I did it, and I'll never forget. I was at a wedding, and I had posted the reel 2 weeks prior on my birthday, and I was at a wedding 2 weeks later on a first date, of all things. And I was like, this is either gonna go really good or it's gonna go really bad. And it went really good, but while I'm at the wedding, my phone's going off. I'm like, what the hell? And this reel is just going crazy. I usually at that time was getting about 12,000 views. And it just accelerated so quick to 1 million views, but it was a voiceover. So I didn't feel like, I feel like I cheated. You know, like I used someone else's content to go viral. So then I started slowly doing my own content where you speak. And that's the content you've seen over the last 3 years. The reason I came to you today is to talk about pivoting. And pivoting is described as a movement that signals a shift in direction, okay? And if you've noticed on my page recently, I shifted from the Professional X to Joe Unfiltered, okay? I haven't given anyone an explanation why. I just did it. I woke up one day, posted it on my story. I had talked to like 1 or 2 people about it. But it was a decision I felt I had to make at that time. I had started the Professional X in this apartment that I lived in, and I lived there for 3 years at the time. I had sold my house in Brandon. She's seen this whole evolution happen. And by the way, this is my daughter, Mia. She's my why. She actually skipped one of her basketball tournaments to be here today, so shout out to her. But I just felt like I had been the Professional X for 3 years, and it had worn its course, you know. And I recently moved out of that apartment, and there were so many moments, you know, my first time going viral. I've had so many viral moments at this time. I've done my first podcast. Shout out to Hakeem for bringing me on his podcast when I first met him. It was the same day we worked out. We didn't even prepare. We just said, let's shoot it. But I felt like after I moved, that there was just this calling inside of me to make a pivot. And in every one of our lives, there's a moment where you are given the opportunity to make a change or make a shift. And if you don't do it in that moment, you're gonna miss the next opportunity that's presented to you. because you're gonna stay on the same timeline that you're currently on, okay? And that pivot for me was shifting from the Professional X brand. Is my brand still up? Do I still have the website? Do I still have merch? Matter of fact, I have some shirts that I'm giving out for free at the end if you want them. They're stickers. But I just felt like I used the brand to get where I wanted to be as far as platform. And I have over 350,000 followers on IG, over 700,000 on Facebook, so over 1 million combined on Meta alone. But I felt like it was just stale, you know? Not to say that I can't come up with nasty, dirty, raunchy jokes every day, but it was like, what am I providing other than like a laugh, you know? When someone comes to my page, they're getting a bunch of laughs. I was giving good information, but what value was I providing, you know? And then I started thinking along the lines of, you know, I really want to help people more. I had dropped the Professional X Dating Playbook, Do's, Don'ts, and Deal Breakers, but I just felt like with the name The Professional X, I wasn't going to be taken too serious in the field I wanted to be in, because I had created this stigma around that name of dirty jokes and past relationships, and I had really boxed myself in. Now, I could have ran with that name forever, you know, and it was probably one of the biggest moments I've had recently, other than my move, that really shook the ground that I was standing on, because everybody knows me as the Professional X, and it's like, that's like my claim to fame. But I was willing to put it all aside to pivot, okay? Because I've been going this way, and my direction I need to go now is this way. So every one of us in here might be dealing with something like that right now, whether it's a relationship, whether it's your spirituality, whether it's a business decision, your work life, your health. All of us are gonna face moments where you need to pivot, okay? And if you second guess it, if you even wait a second, the opportunity will pass you by, I promise you. So what I have now positioned myself to do is to help people, not just with their relationships, if they have fitness. I have opened my lane to where I'm not just the Professional X anymore. I'm not just the guy that has bad ex relationships, you know? I'm the guy that has a wealth of knowledge and fitness. I mean, the first time I reached out to him, I said, yo, let's get a workout in. It wasn't, let's meet up and drink, let's go chase women, let's go smoke. It was like, yo, let's do something that we both align with, you know? And that was another one of the reasons that I chose to make that pivot, was because I didn't feel aligned anymore. I didn't feel like I was on my true purpose and my true calling. I felt like I used that name to get where I needed to be, and then it was time to shift. And another thing was, my daughter's getting older, you know, boys are starting to come around. So I don't want to be putting the type of jokes out there that her potential boyfriend might see, and now I'm giving him a playbook on how to be raunchy with my daughter, you know? And not to, I'm just thinking forward, but these are things as a father that cross your mind, you know? When she was 7, 8, 9, 10, it was good, but now she's 13. Now she's paying attention to stuff. Her friends have been following me for years, and I'm like, I really don't make the type of content that your friends should be following you, you know? Well, now I do, you know? And I still talk about relationships. I'll still use some profanity from time to time, but it's with a passion to help people. And behind the scenes, I have been helping people through DMs for years for free. I've had people reach out to me that were suicidal. I've had people reach out to me that say, look, I wake up every day and I watch your reels because they make me laugh. They bring a bright moment to my day. And those moments, those DMs have meant more to me than any like, any share, any viral reel, because that's value for me. Something I did, even if it changed one person's life, that means so much to me. Because even when I was doing the raunchy jokes, just knowing that I was bringing a smile to people's faces, or people were sharing my stuff with their family, or some of the greatest moments I had is when my friends would call me and, yo, someone in Switzerland just sent me your reel. Someone from China just sent me your reel, and they were like, yo, check this guy out. And they're like, that's my friend, actually. I know him. And in 2016, I was working a freight job, okay? She was a baby. And I remember I was in one of the worst moments of my life, okay? New baby, you know, me and her mom had just split up prior to that. And I remember typing on Facebook, and it was just, I was going through so much. And I remember saying, everybody reading this right now is gonna tell someone about how they met me one day, or how they know me. Fast forward, I've been shared hundreds of millions of times throughout multiple platforms. I went to California when I had 30,000 followers, and the lady recognized my voice because of the way I say mama, you know, because that's one of my catchphrases. I'll be like, mama, you know? So I was in the gas station and I was in line. I was like, oh, I'm sorry, mama, I got too close to you. And she turned around, she was like, I follow you. So that was like a bright moment that people were starting to notice me. As far as relationships are concerned, some of you might be in a position right now where you need to pivot away from someone that you've been with. And I recently just went through a breakup, okay? It wasn't a very long relationship. We knew each other about a year. We dated about 8 months. But within that 8 months, I experienced a lot of hardship. I'm not saying it was because of her whatsoever, but it was something about the dynamic of what was going on in my life that was causing these hardships, you know? Whether it was our energy that we created together that were creating these hard moments. My content felt stale. My energy, my drive, everything just felt like it was, you know, kind of just stagnant. So another one of the things that I shifted and pivoted from was that relationship. You know, we didn't end on bad terms, but it was just a mutual agreement that we're not meant to be. And sometimes in relationships, it's okay to do that, other than forcing yourself to stay with someone because you don't want to be lonely, or because you're scared for them to move on and possibly find the person they're meant to be with. And that's, I think, someone's biggest fear when you break up with someone, is that they're gonna find on and move and find the person that they wanted you to be, or find the person that you think is gonna make them happy. And in all actuality, nobody can make any of you happy. You make yourself happy, and then you find happiness with another person and you create happiness with that person. And I'll never forget, Will Smith said that. He said that it is selfish to expect someone else to make you happy. Because if you're not happy with yourself, no one else will ever be able to make you happy, no matter what they do. And I've been in those positions where I've been with a person and they weren't happy with themselves. It didn't matter what trip we went on, what house I bought, what plans I had to start a family. They were just miserable with themselves. So it wore on me, because you start overextending. You start questioning, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with me? Why am I not good enough? It has very little to do with you. Oftentimes, when people are going through turmoil internally, they're gonna project it onto you. And this is what we don't realize when we're dealing with someone, you know, like if someone has a bad day and they lash out at you, that's a them problem. It might not be anything you did. And oftentimes we need to get away from those type of people, you know? And it can be one of the hardest things you've ever done, especially if you love someone. When love is involved, it's very hard to walk away from someone, but it honestly might be the best thing you ever do for yourself. And I posted something, a reel, the other day, and I saw it. One of my followers had commented on a post on Facebook, and she said, "Love and lust look the same until sacrifice is required." I'm gonna say that again. Love and lust look the same until sacrifice is required. And in every successful relationship, there's gonna be some sacrifice required, whether it's your personal time, whether it's your personal space, whether it's your communication style that might not be effective with the person that you're currently with. We all are not perfect. And when you meet someone else, y'all are literally colliding worlds and trying to make that work. And during that process, there's gonna be sacrifice involved. You might meet a woman that has a couple kids, whoever. There's more women in here than men. Ladies, you might meet a man that's in his purpose stage, where he's in his building stage. You know, some people might call that you're building with potential. But that's on you to decide if you think this man is worth it or not, to sacrifice and grind it out with him. Some of you probably have. You probably stuck time out with men and it didn't work out, you know. But these are things that are going to be required in a relationship. You know, anyone that dates me, they're going to have to know that I have a daughter. And you're going to be an influence in my daughter's life. So if you're out every weekend partying, if you're out hanging with your single friends all the time, that doesn't align with what I'm looking for to represent the spouse that I want to be with and influence my daughter, you know? With the dating playbook, I put that together. It was something I had worked on over the last couple months. And I really wanted to get it dropped before Christmas, but the way things work sometimes, you don't want to force it. And I didn't want to just push something out, you know? But I just feel like the state of dating is so horrible right now for people that are, I think the majority of the people here are like 80s babies or older. 90s? 80s? Okay, we're all over the place, but we're around the same age. And it's just, we grew up a lot different. You know, we grew up where men actually approached women. Men actually got your number. Men actually, we didn't, if we got a girl's number, let's say we went out to a club.
On my hand.
And we got, you know, yeah, on my hand. Hey, write it down. You know, write it down. You know, go home, you got like 5 pieces of paper in your pocket. You know, if you got, let's say you went out and you got 5 numbers, you know, that night. You might have actually connected with one of those women. So you might have got a date out of that. Now we live in the social media era where it's like guys are messaging 100 girls a day. It's like a numbers game. There's no connection. There's no genuine feelings, you know, through the internet shit. And I feel like it's so rare to actually meet someone in person. And the last girl I actually dated, I met her in person, and it was such like a breath of fresh air because I had met a bunch of women online, but it's like, you know, they're meeting me because I have an online presence. So it's like, don't get me wrong, and not to sound cocky or arrogant or anything, I've never struggled with talking to women or with dating in general. But with the internet, it's just a lot different. You don't know people's true motives, and people have energy, people have vibes. And there's been, I remember I did the dating apps in 2016 and 2017. I had them maybe for 1 or 2 months, Tinder and Bumble. Deleted it. It just was such a huge waste of time to me. It was a quick way to get dates and have fun, but it just didn't align with what I wanted to do, you know? So I cut out the dating apps. I give advice in the book about dating apps because not everybody is against it. You know, I give do's and don'ts on how to go about dating. But for me, I like genuine connection, you know? We could have easily probably done this on a Zoom call, but it's that in-person connection that means more when you're meeting someone. You know, when you shake someone's hand, y'all are exchanging energy. When you hug someone, you're exchanging energy. That gives off a vibe. Those are things you can't see online. You know, those are things you can't feel. So when meeting people nowadays, you know, I feel like you need to have your boundaries already aligned, especially if you're at our age. If you're just dating and you're finding yourself in situationships and you're finding yourself in positions where it doesn't align or it's not ideal with you, you do not have your boundaries in place. Because as soon as you have your boundaries in place, you're able to cut people off quicker, you know? It's like I went fishing the other day, and the, bless you.
Thank you.
The captain, he knew immediately, as soon as the fish hit the line, what kind of fish it was, and if we were gonna be able to keep it or not. You know, he was like, depending on how big this fish is, we might be able to keep it, but it's gonna be this type of fish. And I was like, damn. He knows it just based off the way the line's zinging, you know? And it crossed my mind, I was like, if only people had that type of information and knowledge when it came to dating and choosing the right people. if as soon as we saw that first red flag, we had the ability to cut it off. But a lot of us, we look at other people and we give them the benefit of the doubt. And we give them a second chance to give us a red flag and a third chance to give us a red flag. And I heard a saying one day, and it says, when someone paints you a picture, don't give them a second chance to paint another one, because the first picture was the most accurate. You know, it's just like in school back in the day when you took a test. If you second guessed your first answer, more than likely you went on to get that answer wrong if you changed it, because the first answer was most correct. It goes the same way with meeting people. Your intuition is very, very scarcely wrong. It's very rarely ever wrong, you know? And this ties into what everybody has been talking about the gut. A lot of people don't know, unless you've done research into this, that the gut is actually the second brain. And if the gut isn't healthy, then nothing will be healthy. Everything will be off. So one of the things that I've prided myself on as of recent in the last 3 to 5 years is just trusting my intuition better when it came to people. You know, I was single for 4.5 years before I did the last relationship I did. And I was adamant with my boundaries that I did not want anything with no one. Only person I was worried about was her and the women in my family, of course. But I think with that boundary, it lets people know it's not that I'm a player. It's not that I want to be single. It's not that I care to date a bunch of women. It's that until I feel I'm at a place to where I can offer my next partner the highest version of myself, I'm not dating. I'll date, but I'm not going to be in a relationship, because I don't feel I'm where I need to be in a relationship. And, you know, like I said, the last relationship I was in ended, but it was a learning experience. There are no losses. There's only lessons. And you should be able to take a lesson from every relationship you've been in. You shouldn't consider it a loss, because there's something that you were meant to learn. And I read something one time, and it said, until you learn the lessons you're meant to learn from each relationship, you will meet the same person over and over and over in a different form. You know? And you think about it, if you've been in toxic situation after toxic situation after toxic situation, if you really sit down and analyze those relationships, a lot of the variables were exactly the same in each one. You know, either you didn't have boundaries, or you accepted disrespect, or you settled, or you saw the good in a person, you know? But that is basically why I made the pivot I made, is because I wanted to be able to help people on a platform to where I was respected. And not to say that I wasn't going to be respected as the professional ex, and not to say that Joe Unfiltered is like this amazing name, but it took me away from that picture that I had painted as the professional ex, you know? And since then, I've carried myself in a different manner. I haven't shown as much stuff on my stories that I would used to share, because I want to be taken serious. I want to be handled in a different light. And my daughter even told me, she said, "Daddy, you might be a little too dressed up for this today." And I said, "No, because we practice how we play." And one day, when I'm standing in front of hundreds of thousands of people, or thousands of people, or a stadium, or whatever that case may be, it was built in this moment. This is my first speaking engagement.
Hey.
But I wanted to give you the best presentation of myself in current form. I could have easily come here in a pair of jeans with the Professional X t-shirt on and given you the same person that y'all have gotten for the last 3 years. But I gave you the new version, you know, the updated version. And that's something we all are. I made a reel about this prior to switching my name, and it said, you know, we'll update our phones, we'll update our cameras, we'll update our computers. How often do you update your life? You'll take inventory of what you have in your pantry. If you have products, you take inventory of the products you're selling, how many of your calm creams you have. How often do you take inventory of what's going on in your life, of the people you're entertaining, of the food you're consuming, of the content you're consuming? Because not only do we eat food and consume, But when you're watching the content you watch, you're consuming that. That's affecting you in a way. If all you do is sit around and watch content that says men aren't shit, are you ever gonna think that men are shit? You know, this is what is being projected onto you, and these are what your beliefs are gonna slowly form. You know, I don't know if y'all know, but on the algorithm now, you're able to, in the corner, there's an adjustment where you can adjust the settings of what they show you and what they don't show you. I have completely switched that. It's relationships, fitness, and overall self-being or self-well-being. That's what I want to see. That's what aligns, you know? And that's why I'm here today, because Hakeem and I connected. And this is the first time I've seen Hakeem since we worked out and did that podcast that day. But we've stayed connected because the initial connection we made was so strong because our values align, you know? But as far as the dating playbook is concerned, it's still available. I have merch available on my website as well. I have now started offering, this is the first time I mentioned it publicly, is conference calls. I will be doing consulting, helping people with fitness, relationships, or overall well-being, okay? The first call I have is called the Reality Check. It's an hour-long call to where we do a deep dive of what you currently have going on in your life, the obstacles you're facing, cutting out the excuses, and finding out if you're really in a place to make the change or pivot that you want to make in your life. Or I have the Clarity Call, which is a 30-minute, just light check to see where you're at, what's going on, and even if you want to invest in yourself, you know? Because a lot of people want to do things, a lot of people rarely do it, you know? The fact that y'all are even here today on a Saturday, y'all been here most of the day, just shows that y'all are in a position to where y'all want to make changes in your life. You know, you want to be a better version of yourself. Not everybody's willing to do that. I went to the gym today before I came here on a Saturday, you know, because I'm committed to myself. A year and a half ago, I made a lifestyle change. So I started changing the way I eat. I started changing who I hang out with. Last night, I went out and had a drink for my cousin's birthday. And I remember thinking, I had you know, my go-to drink is always tequila and Sprite. And I was out every weekend. For y'all that follow me, y'all knew that was a part of the Professional X. The weekends I didn't have Mia, I was out getting drunk, you know? Last night I tasted that and it was so strong because I have not had a drink in so long. Like I maybe drank a couple times this year where it was something that I was doing every weekend. But in order to become the better version of yourself, you have to cut off the old version of yourself. You have to be willing to let the old version of you die in order to move forward and become who you're meant to be. And that's all a part of the choose yourself process, you know? That's all about making the right pivots in your life. You know what I'm saying? If you watch football, you've ever seen a running back run the ball, those moments when he made someone miss or he did a little shift, that's a pivot. But that little move might have scored him a touchdown, it might have got him a couple yards, but it's such a split-second moment that you have in life. And life flies by. I mean, I remember when this girl was born. She's already approaching 14 here soon, you know? So don't waste any more moments. And whatever you have going on right now that is giving you the opportunity to pivot. Because that moment might fade and it won't be around forever. Like it is literally, if you think about life, everything happens in the blink of an eye. Car accidents happen in the blink of an eye. It ruins lives, you know. Bad decisions. If you're out drinking, you get a DUI. That's the blink of an eye. It's the same way with pivoting. If you sit and you think, oh, I got time, oh, I'm gonna wait till Monday. If you're constantly waiting for the right conditions, you're gonna be waiting forever because the conditions are never right, ever. You just have to take a leap of faith, trust in yourself, and pivot. Thank you guys.